we need to do is go to NASA in Florida. I was like, well, that would be kind of fascinating, but that would be an expensive trip. That would be kind of hard to put together. He said, well, I think watching a rocket or seeing the rockets, that would be just fascinating, something like that. You know, he was really into the space stuff like that. I said, well, I don't know. I said, that'd be real expensive. I don't know if we could pull that off. He said, I never thought we could. And I was like, oh, that came back to bite me. And so, you know, I didn't think he was even listening. But when he said that, I was like, oh, okay, I know where that came from. And so we had to talk a little bit more about, we can, but here's our obstacles: money, travel, you know, just a variety of different things like that. So it's really amazing, that sponge to the environment about how those things are required and stuff. So, and we've done a lot of things. We've taken kids on camping trips and hiking trips and shrimping trips, and I mean, we're committed to doing these things, and quite honestly, it's things that a lot of professionals and families are like, I don't know about that. We took a group of kids to the coast, and we toured the Pascagoula River Basin. Now on that trip we had about 30 kids, and of those 30 kids, about 19 of those kids had autism, and there were a couple parents like, and these were families that had never, their kids had never come to Camp Kaleidoscope, where you see, you know, 60 kids with autism all in the same place. They'd never seen more than 3 or 4 at the same place. They were standing there as they dropped them off like, oh my goodness, and you're really up for this, huh? I said, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And so we got in the boat. We toured for about 2.5 hours in a boat, all up and down the Pascagoula River Basin, not 1 minute of behavioral problems. Now when we hit dry ground, we had a few that we had to sort of decompress after the trip. But yeah, it was, you know, it's one of those things where I'm committed to the notion that we've got to make sure that everything every other kid's getting to do, that we provide those chances out there. I mean, I'm just committed to that, because I think that to do otherwise is not fair. And it's just simply put, it's just not fair. That's why we started Camp Kaleidoscope. I grew up as a boy going to Boy Scout camp. Every kid ought to get to go to camp, or at least have the opportunity to go to camp. If they don't want to go to camp, I tell parents all the time, yeah, he may not want to go to camp, but I promise you, if you'll send him to camp, he'll want to come back to camp. And so, you know, I just think that's part of it, and it is part of the commitment that we as team has made. And as I've started working with IDS, we actually are, me and Yeager Autism are going to begin to do similar type things for older kids now. I mean, we're talking about transitional age kids that are high school age kid, and young adults. We're going to start doing similar type things for older kids as well through IDS. So that commitment's there. We've just got to make sure that we can begin to get the resources to make those things happen. And Dennis has been great. He sends me emails all the time about, I found this, and they've been very helpful. So we're working toward that.
It's just getting the teachers to understand the kids, and I hear you talking, and I just wish they were here to hear you talking about the invisible signs, because they look at Tyler and go, well, you know, so what? He's got, you know, a diagnosis of Asperger's. You know, he should be able to function exactly the way.
I think it's worse for Asperger's than autism.
I think you're right.
I think like autistic kids, they're
They
clearly
can't help it.
delayed, and they're
Yeah.
clearly,
Right.
Mikey is, you know, clearly there's something different about it. But I think the kids that are Asperger's, I think it is tougher. I think the schools don't know as much what to do with them.
We don't, and we have 2 new teachers. We've had 2 new teachers this year. One who says that she has been, you know, teaching kids like this, but I don't think any of them.
My response to folks that do that of course, I don't mix the words a lot of times, because I've been doing this long enough, is that I had a teacher not too long ago over in Alabama that says, I've been teaching kids with autism for about 4 years. And I've said, well, you really should be getting better at it then, because this is really not the right thing to be doing. I mean, you've got some really distinct issues in this classroom. So 4 years, we really got a lot of unlearning to do right now. And she just didn't know quite how to react to that. But it was really the truth, because some of the things that she thought was a good practice in that classroom was the exact things that were causing some of the very troublesome behaviors out of the 2 kids there were 4 kids in the classroom, but there were 2 kids. All 4 of these kids had Asperger's syndrome. There were 2 of them that were really, really handfuls for her, and she was her own worst enemy because of her own practices, so to speak. And so, just because a person says, "I've worked with these kids," that doesn't mean you work with them right. I mean, that's part of that's something that can't be ignored. So.
Well, I mean, my hat's off to them to even, be willing to do so.
Absolutely.
I just don't think they have a clear understanding, and they tend to think, well, we're not going to cut them in the slack.
Right.
And that just is so frustrating.
It is.
If he comes home with 5 assignments and he only gets back with 2 because he has meltdowns all
Sure.
through the evening, they don't care, and we've even had an IEP, give him extra time, don't penalize him, but, I just found out yesterday, he didn't do one of his assignments. It was one of the nights where he had 5 different things to do, and he was just so overwhelmed that night, and I tried to get in contact with all of them, and they won't return emails or phone calls or anything, and it's gotten kind of, tough to communicate with him, but, I thought, I wish they could understand that, he's not, they just have this wrong idea of
Right.
what their expectations
Sure.
of him are, and they don't. They're like, okay, 30 points off for this, 25 points off for that. Didn't show you work, that's, 10 points off for that.
Yeah, the thing that's part of that misunderstanding is that many professions, and teachers are certainly probably some of the most, the most strict to this belief, is that I'm the teacher. The agenda that I set up in this classroom is the agenda of everybody in this classroom. But what they don't understand is that a kid with Asperger's syndrome, like Tyler, he has his own agenda. And it doesn't mean that that agenda is not that he's not going to learn. It's just that agenda is very driving. It's a very strong force in who he is. And if you think that you can completely defy this force, well, you're just going to be grossly wrong. And so your agenda and that person's agenda at some point has to be realized that those 2 things have got to come together. But I see teachers all the time that really stumble over it. I mean, they fall on their own sword with a kid because they're saying, I've been doing this for 20 years, and every kid's done it to this point, and this one is too. And my response is usually, you'll call me in 2 weeks, and you'll really want some help, trust me. It's a matter of a lack of the understanding of this internal mechanism that's so much a part of autism. And maybe, I would probably agree with you, Michelle, that kids with Asperger's syndrome, they just like kids with more classic autism, they have very strong internal drives about certain things, certain agendas and stuff. But a classically autistic child has a more acceptable set of understandings between people around because they clearly have a significant challenge. Whereas a kid with Asperger's syndrome seems to be only a child that's being, very covert. Or overt, not covert. Sometimes they're overt and covert, being very oppositional because they're trying to carry out their agenda, and they realize that gets them in trouble, so they get a little sneakier about it. But at the same time, that's not because they're simply misbehaving. It's simply because you're ignoring a set of circumstances and you're only wanting to be yours, your own agenda. And so we see the math thing, for instance, many years ago, actually, this has been a lot of years ago. Went down to Florida on a case where a kid had been failed and it had gotten really ugly down there. And so a mutual friend of mine said, can you come down and help this family? We went down there. And what happened was this was an 11th grader who was taking calculus, who had autism. And so calculus, just do that math to start, pardon the pun, but doing calculus. So we're not really talking about an academically challenged kid here. We're talking about a kid but he wasn't showing all of his work. And the teacher was just, that's it, he was getting F's. And so the line of questioning went sort of like, when I was talking to the teacher, it was a male teacher, and I said, well, what about his answers? Oh, he always gets the right answers. I said, well, he said, but I need to see that he knows what he's doing. I said, well, okay, there's only 2 ways a person can come up with the right answer on a math problem. You either know how to do it, or you're cheating. Maybe you're guessing, but you can't guess consistently right all the time, not on calculus. And I said, so we're going to say it's one of those two things. So which one do you think it is? Well, no, he doesn't cheat. He said, I don't doubt that he can come up with the right answers, but he refuses to show his work. And he said, I need to know how he's doing it. And that's when I was getting a little frustrated. I said, trust me, you wouldn't understand how he's doing this, even if he were to write it down. But it's just probably his own little mechanism. So he would start showing his work at a certain point. And this thing went all the way to their school board. And the school board upheld that failing grade for this kid. And the parents got so frustrated, the kid got so frustrated because he failed. And kids with Asperger's syndrome do not like to fail. Failure is not an option. If they see themselves as failing, they won't even, or potential for failure, they won't even start sometimes. I'm not going to do that because I might fail. So they're very resistant to that. Anyway, so this kid, the whole thing got just ugly, and they pulled him out of school. He took his GED, went on to a community college, got a degree in computers. And last time that I talked to him, which has probably been 10 or 11 years ago since I talked to the family, he was in South Florida, and he designs these programs. When you go to the hospital, you know how they ask all your information, and you have to type it in, it goes into a database. He designs programs that collects that information so that it goes into the database correct for insurance reimbursement, for other things. That's what he does as a profession. Makes like 6 figures. So I've often wanted to, get him and this teacher back together and say, all that's water under the bridge. But I just want to do one thing. I'd like to compare checkbooks. Let's just do that, okay? So it's just, it's just a real frustrating set of circumstances because it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, he gets counted off, and he does stuff in his head.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, he does stuff in his head, and that's why it's not on paper. But 10 points off didn't show your work.
Okay, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
So, and I know this
I
can
gotta
go
go
for
home and get my little one.
but I will be, but like I said, because of my work with IDS, I will be available and around. And so, if you have questions or something, call up to IDS. Many of y'all know how to get me at my office with Team. That's cool too. I'm here to help you out, and so feel free to contact me and let's see what we can do. And I look forward to being involved more with this group because of my work with Julie as well too, as we put the new resource in. So
That's going to be exciting.
it is. It's going to be very exciting. So.
Yeah, so we're probably going to send out a survey this summer just to check on when people would like to meet.
The visual repetition. And he's done it once with my blinds that are horizontal, but most of the time it's vertical